The second generation of Pokemon brought with it one of the most beloved features of all time, roaming legendaries that run away as soon as you try to battle them, but also such times of day as morning and night. And when I started working on my ROM hack of Pokemon Red, a day and night cycle was a pretty high priority for me. But how is that supposed to work without a real-time clock? Greetings! Welcome to another episode of Porygondolier. Let me answer that question immediately. Today, we're adding a Legends Arceus style day and night system to Pokemon Red. The way that time works in the Hisui region is that one day goes by every 24 minutes. The change is quite gradual, and you can choose to rest if you'd like to skip to a certain time of day. But before I get too far ahead of myself, the first thing to figure out is how this is even going to work graphically. The ROM hack I'm working on, Pokemon Red and Blue Ghostlocke, is built on top of the pokered-gbc engine. This version of the game brings the full colour features of Gold and Silver into the world of Red and Blue. So naturally, the first task was to figure out how Gen 2 does it. And the way it works is actually rather simple. The graphics of a Game Boy system support a background layer, which is our overworld map, and objects, which is anything you can push around if you remove the bit of code that asks if something is a boulder or not. On the Game Boy Color, the background can feature anything up to 8 different 4-color palettes, and these are applied to the 8x8 pixel grid of tiles that make up the environment. For the objects in the game, we have 8 more color palettes, but this time, one of the 4 shades is assigned to transparent, so we can only actually use 3. As you might guess, nighttime in Generation 2 simply changes the colors of each palette, so I could simulate this in Red just by changing the colors. So now we know that it's possible, the next step is to make the colors dependent on something. To do that, I created a new variable in the game called time of day. This can take the value of day or night, but you could add anything you like here, and indeed, later on we'll be adding a few more. I then tapped into the palette loading functions and got them to read in different sets of colours depending on the time of day. This should mean that whenever we warp into a new map or end a battle, the correct palettes for day or night gets loaded in accordingly. Now this is all well and good, but we can do a little better, because in Gen 2, if you're walking around when the clock changes from 5:59 to 6, the overworld palettes change on the fly. I'll come back to that in a little while, because clearly, before moving on, we're going to need some kind of clock. Of course, the game already has a clock of sorts for the in-game time. This keeps track of the number of hours, minutes, and seconds that you've spent playing the game. But I wanted to make a clock that was completely independent from this, and I have a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, if you play the game a lot, and this actually happened to me as a child, the hours counter maxes out at 255, and it wouldn't be much good if the day and night cycle stopped working. Secondly, I want to include a rest until feature like Legends Arceus, which means that we need to be able to adjust the clock without interfering with in-game time. Although Legends has a 24-minute day, due to the slightly slower pace of gameplay, I decided that Ghostlocke will have a 48-minute day, so 1 minute IRL maps to 30 minutes in the game. I tapped into the existing time routine and made it so that whenever 1 second ticks along in the in-game time, the clock time ticks along as well. I also made it so that even if the hours get maxed out, this will continue to function as normal. This actually has a completely harmless side effect on the in-game time, which I can show you briefly. At the bottom here of my custom builder VBA-M, I have the hours, minutes, and seconds displayed in the status bar. The time is already maxed out, and in this mostly vanilla version of the game, all 3 of them are completely frozen. But after applying the mod, the seconds continue to tick, and this is what's driving the new clock. When the clock hits a certain time, the time of day variable is switched from day to night, and vice versa. Later, I also added a clock display which pops up with the start menu, and opening the start menu also causes the clock to pause. With that done, I just needed one more variable to keep track of which overworld palette was currently loaded. By constantly comparing the value of this to the time of day, we can perform palette changes on the fly. Hello there, it is me, Loaded Palset. I'm terribly sorry for asking you this question over and over again, but I think it's currently daytime and I just want to check if you also think it's currently daytime. What's that? Nighttime, you say? Well then, I'd better update the palette and change my opinion. I'll be back in a fraction of a second to bug you again. Get it? 'Cause the values are stored in the working RAM? Huh. I expected more booing. Can I at least get a bah? So now we're very close to having everything Gen 2 has, just with a clock that won't annihilate your save battery. Naturally, the next step was to add in morning, but I started to notice a few things weren't right. For one, the Viridian Forest always looks like this, and that goes for the Safari Zone as well that uses the same tiles. There are also some outdoor areas that make use of indoor colour schemes. These were the decking area of the SSN and the two roof areas in Celadon City. Let's start with the Viridian Forest. I rigged this up to have some nighttime colours, and sadly I don't have the footage of what that looked like, but I wasn't very satisfied with it. And actually, I wanted to make a few changes to daytime as well. As far as I can tell, pokered-gbc is a perfect colorization of the original game. It's not intended to be some kind of bells and whistles style ROM hack, it's the original game from the 90s with a nice coat of paint on it. This results in a few things that, if one felt so inclined, could be modified or tweaked to look a little different. Which is not particularly necessary, but I wanted to do that, and so I did. Welcome to the new Viridian Forest. The grass is exceptionally green, and the tree stumps are marvellously brown. I like it a lot. And here's what it looks like at night. Funnily enough, Game Freak didn't have to do any of this in Gen 2, because the Viridian Forest is just this. It's just occurred to me that they more or less just carved out a path in the trees that already existed on Route 2. But anyway, the point I was trying to make here is that it just uses the normal overworld colours, and they didn't need to do anything special for the Viridian Forest. Oh, and they also scrapped the Safari Zone. Travelling. I like the implication that he took the door with him on his travels. Wait, this gives me an idea. There we go, that'll do. That's better, let's go and have a look. That actually does look somewhat nightimey. Why couldn't they just make the Viridian Forest with these bits? Looks alright. I mean, the trees do look a bit weird. Why don't I have a town map? Oh. Weird. That seems to stop you from going out of bounds. This place is huge. It's meant to be a fountain or something. It's pretty cool. Oh wait, is that the same fountain you find in National Park? In fact, are these all just assets from National Park? Now I feel like I need to go and check that. Yeah, looks like it was more or less using bits and bobs from National Park. If we go down here, we can also... Go down here, we can also see the funky trees. And this little thingy. Right, let's get off the tangent and back on the video. And this is the all-new Gen 1 Safari Zone. Well, not all new, but you get the idea. Hey, take a look at these corners. These were rather tricky. Also went ahead and switched over those other outdoor maps to use outdoor palettes and change according to the time of day. Funnily enough, the SSN doesn't exist in Gen 2, and Game Freak did nothing to address the roof areas. I'm not trying to be super critical here, but this just looks like another indoor floor. Good morning. This is what morning looks like in Gen 2. I find it a little bit much. Very yellow and bright. So I toned it down a little, and this is what I came up with. The change from day in the Viridian Forest is quite subtle, and those other outdoor locations just use the same outdoor palettes as everywhere else. Maybe just another 5 minutes. So, we're done, right? Why stop here? My favourite time in Legends Arceus is evening time, and I wanted to see that here as well. So I took the daytime colours, dimmed them down slightly, and shifted them towards a more warm, twilighty kind of thing. And here we are. Good evening. I'd love to hear what you think of this one. It's certainly one of my favourites, and I think part of that is that the evening comes and goes very quickly, being only 3 minutes at a time. So then I was testing everything out, and I was quite happy with how the transitions looked, with the exception of night to morning, which just seemed a bit sudden. Good dawning? This one is a mixture of night and day with a very slight shift towards pink. I'm really pleased with how this one turned out, especially in the Viridian Forest. Finally somewhat satisfied with the breakdown of a day. I mean, I could keep going. We could have different colour palettes for every hour of the day, but this felt like probably a pretty good place to stop. The last thing to do was to make a rest until feature. This gives you 4 choices of time of day until which you may rest. This works by setting the clock time according to your choice. Currently, it's only wired up to Red Zone Bed, but in the future, I plan to make this available in every Pokemon Center and maybe the rest houses in the Safari Zone as well. Apart from that, there was just one more thing that I decided to do, and this was completely unnecessary, but I tried making a town map variant for nighttime, and one thing led to another, and yeah. Now for a topic which didn't really fit anywhere else in the video, and that is the topic of day and night cycles in Pokemon games that don't support full Game Boy Color mode. All of the things I've added to do with the clock could easily be added to a vanilla version of Pokemon Red. And even if you couldn't see that it's nighttime, you could still do things like change the wild encounters depending on the time of day. But when it comes to the graphical side of things, older hardware, or I should probably say, even older hardware, presents something of a challenge, but there are some possible solutions. Firstly, the Super Game Boy scenario. In case you didn't know, the Super Game Boy and its sequel, the Super Game Boy 2, are SNES cartridges that allow you to play Game Boy games on your TV with slightly enhanced graphics. This is how I normally set things up for the solo runs on my channel, and it applies one 4-color palette to the entire screen. The palette used already changes depending on the map, so it'd be fairly easy to convince the game to use different palettes at night. That's not bad actually, but since this is not a GBC exclusive, we'd also have to consider the other options. Playing on a GBC without full colour support, or even playing on one of these. In these modes, it's unable to use Super Game Boy palettes, so we're a lot more limited. One way to achieve nighttime would be to darken everything the way Rock Tunnel does when we haven't used Flash. This is done with something called palette shifting, which is just a fancy way of saying that more of the dark colours get used and the light colours don't get used at all. In Rock Tunnel, the palettes get shifted 2 places towards black. It's certainly something, but probably not great to actually play. We can also go halfway in between by shifting the palette just 1 colour over, although this does make the objects look very green on GBC. As it happens, Game Freak have actually addressed this problem, because although Crystal version is GBC exclusive, the same is not true of Gold and Silver, and you can in fact boot up these games on an original DMG Game Boy. But it looks like what they managed to do was shift the colours by 1 for the background layer without shifting the objects. It's obviously not ideal, but it's also pretty cool that they found a way to make it sort of work. Anyway, I'm sure we can all agree that day and night, and all the other times I've added, benefit greatly from the GBC's enhanced colour system. I actually approached this project with a second, ulterior motive, because I quite like to play ROM hacks on my actual real Game Boy, and I do so with this, the EverDrive GB X3 by Crix. It's a fantastic piece of hardware, not sponsored, but highly recommended. Now this is the least expensive option of all the GB flash carts made by Crix, and as such, it doesn't contain a real-time clock. And I was recently playing Black and White 3 Genesis, a brilliant Gen 2 ROM hack by Azure Keys, but it was rather saddened that I couldn't experience the clock-based features. It got me thinking, if only the in-game clock could be uncoupled from the non-existent RTC, and then just have a day go by, I don't know, every 48 minutes perhaps? Now I ended up doing most of my mod without peaking at Gen 2. except for some colours of course, but I'm fairly sure a portion of this mod could be hooked up to a Gen 2 game to achieve a similar system. But this video is quite long already, so maybe we'll look at that one another day. Hey Mr. Poryman, however did you manage to keep track of all those different colours? Well, I'm very glad you asked. I made an Excel spreadsheet. You put the numbers in the boxes and then you push the button and it fills all the cells in with colours. Yeah, I just wanted to show this off. Pretty cool, eh? Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you'd like to see what else has been going on in the Ghostlocke project, I have a playlist of videos that you could check out if you want to. And as always, I'd like to wish you a wonderful day, and I look forward to welcoming you back to another video soon. For now, bye!